Hi, Dr. Hastings. My name is Tess. I'm just going to talk about my clinical reflection video or my clinical reflection, and this is where I'm going to talk about like my experience with each of the sites that I've been at, and also the objectives that I've met through each clinical site. So I'm just going to go down the list and describe what the experience I've had, and then also the objectives. So the first one is the advanced practice nursing role, which I was at a bariatric and trauma center, which is kind of like almost like a physician's office and like a lot of consults after the surgery. And this was with Brian Weinberg, and he was a very nice guy, but and I really appreciate everything he did, and it was an amazing experience. I went into patients' rooms and I listened to him talk and do consults. And the objectives addressed is 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 3, he used effective communication when talking with the patient and consulting them on their proper dietary intake after the bariatric surgery, and like saying like less carbs, more protein, such like that. And then 4, he did disseminate current research. He actually used research. I saw it him have some research he was doing between clients where he was looking up new practices on bariatric surgery, and he was implementing actually he said he always implements his EBP through his consults and his practice. 5, functions as competent patient advocate, which goes into the book that we have here. That advocacy is the right for the patients to take action for themselves. So Brian represented this very well through his consults by allowing them to speak on their behalf and talking about what they believe is right for themselves, and then also informing them on what the best treatment option with their beliefs. So I thought that was very cool. And it also goes with provision 3, which the nurse promotes, advocates for them, and strives to protect the health and safety rights of the patient. So he allowed them to speak for themselves, and then also allowed with that beliefs, give them proper consult to help them and protect their safety and their health. So I thought overall that was a very, very nice experience, and I appreciate everything he did for me. The next one I went to was the political legislative, which I did actually all of them. So Madden, Schlossberg, Kaziorowski, and then Munsey. And I didn't know what to expect from this experience, but overall, I realized that politicians actually have a lot to do with healthcare, and they advocate a lot what's right for citizens, and as well as nurses and other healthcare professionals. So the one is 5, which I said is a patient advocate. So like I said earlier, they're a patient advocate, or not only a patient advocate, but for their wording, they're more like a citizen advocate. They allow us to take action for ourselves, and they're kind of like the speaker for us. 7, recognize their role in policy making. They're politicians, they make policies and such, so I thought that fit perfectly. And then 8, the potential ethical dilemmas. One of Munsey talks about how he wants free healthcare, which can be seen as an ethical dilemma, because on one half, many people believe I pay for my healthcare, so how is that fair? But then on the other half, he talks about how free healthcare can actually lower overall costs, as America is one of the highest paying, they pay the most out of all countries on healthcare, because of how much it costs for healthcare. And doing so can limit people from going to the ER for a complication that turned out to be major, where originally it was minor, that they could have just went to a primary provider and gotten consulted there and had proper treatment before it got to the point where they're at now, where now they're paying thousands of dollars on going to the ER. So I thought that was a very interesting perspective, but I can see how that can be an ethical dilemma between one side versus the other. So community leadership, I really like this one. It was about the prisons. That Skyline I went to, I didn't really know what to expect for this one either. I was a little nervous going into it, but overall, the nurses were very nice, and they taught us the different side of nursing from bedside and their ethical dilemma, which goes into the one I'm talking about, which is kind of actually there's two ethical dilemmas. One being that they had to speak with prisoners, which a lot of people could be like, how can you deal with prisoners? Like they did felonies, like they could be murderers. But at the same time, it takes a special person to take care of those people. And you have to put your beliefs and bias aside in order to help these patients. And that is one of the biggest things in nursing that a lot of people seem to forget, is to put their bias aside. And also, in the prisons, I noticed one of the nurses had to use restraints, which honestly, it's kind of like restraints in terms of handcuffs. So I put those two together, and actually it fits perfectly with my ethical paper on restraints. And Sheepsman talks about like the use of restraints can cause like death due to like overuse of it, because of the it can cause like skin breakdown if you're occluding them back to their hands against their back, and also like they had them around their feet and they had to sit against that chair. That can cause skin breakdown over time, because there's a lot of older individuals in the prisons. I was very surprised by that. There was like a lot of 80-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds in there, and their skin is already deteriorating. They're getting older. They don't have this great like rigid Tuger and what's the word? Like overall like better skin than like a younger person might have. So I feel like that's an ethical dilemma, because they're in restraints or like handcuffs, restraints, because they maybe were trying to assault someone or maybe like they said something they weren't supposed to, and the cops decide to restrain them because that's a punishment. But at the same time, like you need to see the ethical side that this can cause skin breakdown, which kind of goes against like the health and safety of that patient. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I saw the ethical pieces in that, and I totally would go there again. That was very interesting. So the next one was Lehigh County Humane Society, and I love animals. That's honestly the reason why I did it. But the thing that made me open up the most is the advocacy that goes along with not just patients, but in pets. Like, that little kitten wants that little bow over there, like, or a little string. I'm going to give them that string. It's not, let's take action for themselves. They're confined in a cage. Maybe they want to go out, so you have to compensate for that and give them things that they want, their favorite food. Do things that they want for themselves, and also increase their quality of life. And also, I'm just looking at my objectives, sorry. And then 3 is you have to use effective communication. They're in isolation. Like Skylar and I worked on the isolation cat room. So you have to provide effective communication to determine, these cats can't touch the other cats, because you can cross-contaminate and get those ones sick and then contaminate the whole facility, which is really bad. So you have to use that communication skill. And also, a lot of the volunteers already know what, like Fluffy's favorite toy is. So like they communicate with us and let us know, hey, like Fluffy's favorite toy is that string. And that way it increases their quality of life and their happiness. Interprofessional, I did this with Dr. Joe Shadid, which he is a professor at Cedar Crest, and he was trying to convince us all to get our MSN in like business administration, which I thought was really funny. But I think this one was very educational, and it comes across almost all of the objectives, a lot of the objectives, I mean. In that, like, one, he uses like his overall background of nursing and his business management to provide adequate housing and adequate care for these nursing home residents. And for 2, he uses the basic principles of management to keep, which is basically what his degree is in, is management, so that fits there quite well. And then 3, he uses effective communication. He has to use effective communication to know what the nurses are doing, everything's doing. He's literally the top dog on the top that manages everything. So he has to have proper communication in order for that pyramid to flow very fluid. And then 7, he recognizes the roles in nurse policy. So he makes the policies. He's the top dog, honestly. I think there's someone above him, but he's basically the top dog in that facility. So he makes the policies and the rules for the employees, the residents, etc., and makes sure everything is flowing as good, like well and adequate as it can. And overall, I really, really enjoyed it there. And I told him I would go. He's like, you guys can work here. And I'm like, maybe I will, So overall, I really enjoyed that. And then the next one is continuing education. This one is just a lot of informational stuff. I did the SNA and the glycemic. So this one actually goes with a lot of the objectives. So one is using knowledge. It's very interdisciplinary with the different roles. I think there was a nurse practitioner there who's using their interdisciplinary practice of their nursing and then their provider, and as well as like using flight nurse, SCAR, burn, ICU, all different areas. And then the diabetes, glycemic, they use like, therapy because you have to like walk and stuff and make sure the neuropathy is good. And then also the diabetic aspect as well. And also like make sure their ulcers are good, so you need wound care. Very interdisciplinary. 3, you have to use effective communication. They provided that throughout the speech by talking to us and keep providing us very informational information. And 4, they use research. I feel like that's very straightforward. They use research throughout their whole, for both of them, for all of them, to teach us and provide us proper education in each of the subjects. And they continue personal leadership growth and development as an independent practitioner in nursing and contributing to a member society. So this one fits there perfectly because they contribute. The nurse practitioner fills her role in there because I think that one was for the burn. She was a nurse practitioner, and she uses her leadership skills for that. Let me see. Peer leadership, this is the one I enjoyed the most. It made me realize how much we've grown as a student. Going from the beginning to now, I realized like, wow, I really did actually know a lot. Like I actually didn't know anything when I started nursing school. So overall, it's very heartwarming and rewarding. And for this one, I said it was 1 because I had to use my knowledge of skills, my sciences of my pre-nursing, and also all my interdisciplinary of like my psychiatric nursing, my mom-baby, my 309 experience, and now my peds and my acute care to like help with the clients on med-surg, because honestly, you really don't, not necessarily mom-baby, but like you really get whatever there. You get whatever. And normally you get 2 patients, but on peer leadership day, you get all 10, 20, or whatever, how many it was, because I knew all their patients by the end of the day, which is all different fields. And then also 3, because I had to use communication to provide education for them and teach them proper ways of how to get their 309, as well as proper like care and report. So for my independent, I did all of it carried over, I talked about already, but the one that I didn't was the fall open house with Dean Rob, and this one's kind of similar with the peer leadership. It was more talking about like students who wanted to come to Cedar Crest, who are like maybe in high school or even like older, but just like teaching about how our college works, how the nursing world works in our school. And it was very, heartwarming and rewarding to like teach them and be like, hey guys, like this is like how we do it, like this is how it works. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell them it's the easiest ride, because by far it wasn't. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh my God, it was horrible, you need to leave. Because at the end of the day, no nursing school's like, I love nursing school, but it's not the easiest thing ever. So providing them proper education and such definitely falls under that category, which wraps up my my reflection. And thank you so much for listening.